Good day to everybody. Good morning to everybody who is participating in this United for Ukraine traditional webinar, which we are calling Solo Talks. And my name is Andrius KUBILIUS. I am a member of European Parliament from Lithuania, and I am initiator and also coordinator of United for Ukraine activities. And we are really very happy that today we shall have a possibility to talk with one of very active members of our network from the very beginning. At that time, back in spring, he was a member of Estonian Parliament. Now he became Foreign Affairs Minister of Estonia and still very active member of our network. And this is, of course, Urmas Reinsalu, Foreign Affairs Minister of Estonia, and we're happy that we can have discussion with him, because as a minister we are following how active he is on the same agenda, support Ukraine, support Ukrainians' victory, and bringing the whole European Union onto that track of support for Ukraine. Now, really, before I will give the floor to Urmas, I just want to say that our network is expanding. Now we have around almost 400 members of different parliaments from all over the world, more than 30 countries. We have expanded also, and we are creating a network of experts from different think tanks. More than 200 of them are also in this network. We are continuing our activities online, webinars and Zoom conferences, and those who are interested to look in the previous conferences can look into our website, which is now in shape and active. And also we're doing our advocacy trips. I just can inform that we just, with a big delegation of Ukrainians and members of different parliaments from Europe, we visited this week Paris and spent 2 days. And I would say that I am a little bit more optimistic about Paris and French position than I was before. But now, Urmas, really pleasure to have you. And I have very general questions. How do you see the situation, first of all, in Ukraine? I know how often you were traveling to Ukraine before. And second, how you see the situation on EU side. What priorities, what issues, what challenges for all of us to convince EU institutions, to convince capitals to support Ukraine till the end, till the full victory, which is coming. Of course, we are happy and we are grateful to Ukrainian soldiers and can congratulate with Kherson liberation. But things are still, really not an easy ones if we are looking into the future. Not only military victory, but reconstruction, of Ukraine, integration towards EU. On another side, sanctions, tribunal, and so on. Those are the issues which we are discussing. And one logistical remark, all who wants to ask Urmas any question or to make comment, please write it into the chat. And I will try to read them, and that is how usually we are doing the whole job. So now, really, pleasure, Urmas, to give the floor to you.
Thank you, Andrius. Thank you personally, your team, and all the members of our network. Very vitally dealing with all the issues. But my core message now is truly that the situation is such that we need to make a pledge toward a change of support philosophy paradigm, I would call. So it has been in the course of this war. Let me stress that this support of Western community has not been sufficient because war has continued. And secondly, the response of the further Russian atrocities or escalative steps has been, we already know that, a additional set of sanctions. Now the 9th set is still, it takes time, unfortunately too long. And secondly, also a new tranche of weapons aid. And this is like it goes like in a keeping like a symmetrical response to Russian Federation actions. I think this paradigm needs to be dramatically changed, that we are going to invest to Ukrainian victory, not depending in that context of Russian Federation military actions. And in that sense, what is most important is that this threat of from Western capitals of false peace pressure, that if now, and of course we're very positive about this Russian forces going to another side of Dnieper River, but it could be also created such kind of approach in international fora that Ukrainian friends would be incapable to overpass the river, and also vice versa, symmetrically the Russians. And now it could be momentum to pressure Ukrainian friends to work on a certain consensus-based peace. And this is something I think our network approach should be clear, that from our, of course, it is an issue of Ukrainian friends, but our vision of this fair peace concept should be a full liberation of Ukrainian territory. Secondly, indeed, full reparations for these losses what have been done. And thirdly, also a legal accountability. This should be a basis, as also has stated so clearly Ukrainian President Zelensky when he held his speech in United Nations General Assembly. Secondly, I think what is now needed if to call to this change of paradigm is now about weapons deliveries. When we are speaking how, and unfortunately we see how cruel is this additional war crime of annihilating the civic infrastructure by Russian artillery or by missiles. The pledge to rise the altitude of weapons deliveries, this is still a vital, this is a false myth which is still ongoing, that we are fully out of stockpiles. We have put, Western community has put, different countries have put certain limitations. And particularly, I think what is very important to keep also that Ukrainian friends would have some opportunity to deter Russians of further these annihilations of civic infrastructure. Indeed, this is a long-range missiles. Now there is a certain understanding under 100 kilometers missiles to deliver, which means that as also Ukrainians have to put their cannons and MLRS some 20, 30, 40 kilometers behind the front line, that Russian missiles would not get them. So it makes this range of current missiles, what Western country donors are giving, rather shorter when it's needed also to make a certain deterring pain to enemy. Secondly, I think also very important is truly to give a shield to Ukraine. It means a medium range, a long range air defense systems. And of course, now also if to look towards our biggest possible contributors, US, other bigger Western European donors, not to put any political caveats on giving either fighter jets or tanks to Ukrainians. I think this is something for the change of this paradigm is badly needed. And secondly, also on the sanctions regime, I think it needs a paradigmatic change with nuances to deal with sanctions. This is going to be old paradigm now, and this is going to be far, I think, far less than what is needed to harm the heart of the beast. And of course, in the center point of gravity is a energy, resources, income, and we have to admit that comparing to last year Russian federal budget or to 2020 federal budget, this year income of Russian Federation federal budget from oil and gas is going to be bigger. So this is a moral entrapment we have to avoid to fall. On legal accountability, as I mentioned, that this should be, for our network, for my assessment, a certain precondition to a certain peace. To avoid these atrocities in future, also establishment of tribunal. Now, European Council has tasked the Commission to address the issue of legal accountability on aggression crime. I think there is a very vital need to put it a political issue, a policy element of European Union politics. An additional issue, more academic issue, is what is the legal framework of this hybrid tribunal, whether it belonging to under umbrella of any international organization or established by country states parties agreement solely. But that this, and I think this is going to be also a lakmus how we see a future of relations towards Russian Federation after the war. And this lakmus needs to be answered right now in the middle of this genocide taking place. If we are not taking the answer now, so later on it will be far more complicated to do that. And I'm happy I recently had talks with Swedish colleague who paid support to that initiative. Also, North Macedonian colleague visited me yesterday. We spoke on that matter. So the group of like-minded countries is on rise. And I think also in a parliamentary level, this positive, friendly pressure towards governments is very needed. And also in a perspective, speaking about issue of EU and NATO membership of Ukraine. This is something what I fully support, this Andrius proposal also to create some kind of friends club like Berlin process of support group on Balkans enlargement of EU as was created years ago. And I think not making a mechanical parallel, I hope it's going to be more successful in this initiative, but in truly that we could already next year to launch talks and open the negotiations. This is something what we need indeed, a full determination of like-minded countries and to get also practical deliverables. And we are going to have also a group of countries meeting already on this Sunday evening before the next foreign ministers meeting on Monday. And also an issue of NATO membership. This is one thing what we can say that there has been in a way silence. The Central and Eastern European heads of states who visited Ukraine, this was a formula, made a certain statement. I think it was right 3 days after President Zelensky's statement on making an application that the Bucharest communique paragraph is still valid and should be a basis of how to consider Ukraine application. But now I think we need to loudly raise the issue. Of course, everybody understands this is not the case of literally tomorrow's decision of the full membership, but I think when we are speaking about the security architecture of Europe after the war, so I think our position should be clear that there can't be a situation that after the war, one terrorist state continues to terrorize all his neighbors and countries in the region of their future options of security or a way of life. I think this should be a precondition that we should, in a way, look also the way that this instinct of appeasement of Russia or fear of Russian involvement, this war should end that thinking paradigm, and we should this should be also a precondition for our assessment of future of Europe, because security environment, because this means also that we have learned from this war, that these sacrifices are past, that not we are just saying that now we are taking one chapter, there is going to be some kind of frozen conflict, and after 1 year, 2 years, it's going to repeat itself. Now we indeed need to say that this European security architecture is in that it needs also a new paradigm. The old paradigm is ended, and we need also more determined approach. So to end my first remarks is indeed the first is that we need to clearly give, from my viewpoint, a strong also on behalf of our network to support the Ukrainian victory, not to the false peace pressure to encourage our national governments, all the Western community, all the world community. And secondly, we need a new paradigm to invest to Ukrainian victory. And because now we have to understand that Russia is thinking time is working for them. So this is a Ukrainian, physical as a social economic unit, that the Ukrainian physical existence is under pressure, where they as the war is going longer and longer, it's going to be more painful to survive. And therefore, we need to end this war earlier and to end it by ramping up against the aggressor. Thank you.
Okay, so Urmas, thanks a lot for that overview, of the whole picture and short-term priorities and I would call longer-term horizons. You touched upon them in a very clear way. I will try really to, I see something like 4 topics which you raised. One is, victory and weapons. Second, tribunal, and then negotiations on the membership in EU and also NATO. And I will try, maybe we can elaborate on them a little bit, taking one by one. And then again, I would repeat now that everybody who is participating can put their questions on the chat. I will ask Jonas to check if chat is working, because sometimes during our previous seminars, sometimes it was appearing that chat function was not working. So, but now let's come back to what you call paradigm, major paradigm of the whole, our position. I agree absolutely with you, that we need to, look into our responsibility to assist Ukraine, to the full victory, and not to go, to some kind of false, temptations to look into any kind of proposals or ideas coming from Russian side, on ceasefire negotiations, and I would say even add one additional element, that this victory is very much needed, not only for Ukraine itself, and not because of justice or whatever what we can talk about, but it's also very much needed for different future of Russia. because defeat of Kremlin, defeat of Kremlin army, defeat of Putin in Ukraine maybe can open the doors for some kind of transformations, possible transformation in Russia. It's a different topic. I will not elaborate on that, but that is what can happen only with full victory. But now on this victory path, I am always saying in a very simple way. At least Ukrainians have shown that they can achieve the victory, with their resolve, with their military capabilities, with their young soldiers really able to fight, in the front, in such with such capabilities, which I would say many of NATO armies, should take example. But of course, it's again very clear that when the victory, full victory, can be achieved, and when Russian army can be totally defeated, it depends mainly on weapon deliveries, which the West is doing. And here I see one issue, an European issue, because at least the numbers which we can take from open sources, I am using quite recent article in Politico magazine, which is showing that during 2022, during this year, Americans provided weapons with a total value of 25 billion euros. Great Britain provided with a value of 4 billion euros. And the whole European Union, both through peace facility and through through member states, where Estonia is featuring really very clearly, the whole European Union provision was 5.6 billion euros. So less than 6 billion. So Americans provided 25, Europeans provided 6 billion. And I remember your number, I don't know, you since you have been, also defense minister at some time in your CV, so I trust your numbers when you have said that Ukrainians are losing each day, losing or spending the weapons with a value of 400 billion euros, which means that, in order to keep Ukrainian capabilities, there is a need of much larger, weapons deliveries. When we are speaking not about, individual weapons, whatever, HIMARS or scissors or whatever is provided, but when we speak about the value of the weapons. And I see the challenge for Europe. How we are going, to do and what we need to do in order really to be at least, on an equal footing with the United States. So my question is here, very simple. Do you see any possibilities that inside of European Union, some kind of discussion will start, or maybe it's going on, exactly, how we can have what I call, war finances, war budget, because to finance from ordinary budget, from multi-annual financial perspective, all the expenditures of the war is almost impossible. But I still do not hear that something, is coming different. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Thank you, Andrius. And when you mentioned, for example, US 25 billion and so on, these figures, we have to admit that also this goes to two elements. One element is these weapons, what are consisted in this figure, what are already on the ground, which are just transported as ammunition or cannons or whatever. But another is that also bigger donor states are like measuring under these numbers, also like checks. They are giving a check and saying, you can order from our military industry, which is of course better than nothing. But we have to admit that it takes a long perspective also to get to the order line. And then, for example, I just spoke with Korean weapon industrialists. I asked how quickly you can prepare LMRSs, for example, they said, okay, very good, but 1 year, it takes 1 year. So it basically gives this perspective, what is needed immediately and what is has been done from our side. I fully agree with you. I have in many times also in EU ministers meeting raised an issue that we need not to support just a separate view what countries are capable to deliver or not, that it should be centrally financed. Well, this arm to do that, European Peace Facility, now we are basically running out the resources. So it was targeted, aimed to be for 7 years. And now we are already, I think, during this set of these tranches of, well, financing the country's military aid contributions, we are already used around, as I remember, 6 billion. So basically it's going to end. And my pledge has to be that we need to upgrade into a new paradigm, at least 50 billion euros. It would be something that, well, if we use all the money, okay, but but we see also, we give also a signal to ourselves, but also the signal to Russia. And of course, its signal will be got also from Ukrainian side, because Ukrainian friends are also looking, well, European Union, you decided about, well, one tranche was decided already in May to give financial support, but it still fully has not delivered. And of course, it creates also a particular issue where our transatlantic friends have not raised, but looking the share of European friends and looking the share of US, it is fully unbalanced. And well, war is still going on in our continent, we have to admit.
Well, absolutely, no, I agree with you, Urmas, and that's sure the same, attitude we have on those, on not military financial assistance. You know very well, Europe promised 9 billion, now 6 are delivered, but as we understand, 3 will not be delivered during this year because of some German position, German finance minister position or whatever. Now Europe is trying to promise for next year 18 billion, 1.5 during each month, which is really, it's very clear that external assistance for Ukraine next year, according to IMF, evaluations is around 3 billion per month. Americans did their promise, and then promise for next year. Europe is still fighting because now, as we understand, Hungary said, no, we do not agree with that, proposal from Commission how those 18 billion can be organized. So that's really quite a challenge, quite an issue for Europe. Now on military, deliveries, I see the question which I will try to read in a very quick way, which comes from our good friend Andrius KUBILIUS from France, from National Assembly. We met in Paris. He's in the leadership of our network, and he is asking a very clear question. That he asks that we should use our network to put pressure on our respective political groups on weapon delivery question. In France, Republicans, members from my group, from UPP, issued recently a report explaining that the country does not have enough ammunition in case of the intensive conflict, criticizing the fact that we have given too much armaments to Ukraine. Please explain them that it's very counterproductive, and the same goes with about socialists, and this is really becoming an issue. Perhaps the same was announced by Germans, that they cannot deliver anything more because they will be naked in their own defense capabilities. We hear some kind of similar debates even in Lithuania. And my question, what would be your reaction? How you see? Because I'm saying always very simply, I consider that war in Ukraine is our war. And that's why we need to look, how to use even those resources which we are keeping, for our armies. Because if we shall all together, we shall not win in Ukraine then the war will come, to our homes, and it's much better to fight, till the victory in Ukraine, not to wait when the war will come to our house. So please, Urmas, yeah, that is a question to you.
Well, yes, I have followed also whether these numbers of opinion polls are correct or not, but basically, well, still majority of population in Germany and France are supporting military deliveries to Ukraine, but the majority is not anything we can compare, I think, in Baltic countries where this is basically a consensus, but plus 50% of people. In that context, let me put it to the perspective that, of course, it is depending on the concepts, how we see the method of ending the war. And this is actually the core issue, because I would say that it is like cutting the tail of the dog by slices. Prolonged war is going to be far painful and expensive to us, as not speaking or mentioning Ukrainians' sufferings. And so it means that to end the war earlier would be my recipe is indeed to invest to Ukrainian victory. Of course, the cheapest wars are wars which we are able to avoid. And let me ask also if we can imagine, if we, Western countries, would deliver such amount of weapons that we have already given to Ukraine, but before the 24th of February, it would raise a question whether in that context such attack, when or how it could be started or not. So we have to look indeed to the perspective, in that perspective, and also to put to the second perspective. If unimaginable would take place in March, and Russia could anyhow to take control over the territory of Ukraine, what we would face then, except shame and fear in that context? To whom we would have, I don't know, the partisans maybe, or to whom to deliver any kind of portions of what kind of support, or have we could be able to reach to this altitude of sanctions we have reached now to the end of year? I think when we are speaking about Zeitenwende, I think inside our hearts it still hasn't taken place. That this understanding of the paradigmatic issue that the Russian invasions against us during the last decade plus have not been a separate set of involvements against our political system, economic system, or security system. This is actually not anything less than attempt to take a superiority over us.
Yeah, Urmas, I cannot add anything else. There is very good comment from Andrius KUBILIUS, which can end our discussion of weapons. I quote Andrius: "To help Ukraine is not an option; it's our duty." So that's really what we need to have, in mind, and we need to convince everybody in Europe that this is our duty. Now, a second question, which time is running very fast. Now we can touch maybe a little bit on that, on tribunal, and knowing how much you were again, since you have been minister of everything in Estonia, including Minister of Justice, as we remember, and I remember very well, how strong you have been from the very beginning when the war started on this issue and proposals and ideas of having a special tribunal. And tribunal, what we are looking now, how to establish a special tribunal on the crime of war aggression. When ICC now is investigating all the war crimes, that is what I'm trying to explain to audience, that ICC now is investigating all the crimes in Bucha, in Irpin, killings, raping, and so on and so on. So we are looking for possibility to create, in addition to that, special tribunal, because and tribunal which would investigate a crime of war aggression, which is according to international international law is a crime of leadership. And as we understand, ICC is not, at least I have been to several conferences where, best international lawyers were discussing, all those issues. And I understood that general conclusion is that ICC is perhaps not has a mandate to investigate exactly this leadership crime. So that is why we are talking about ad hoc tribunal, and the tribunal which can be organized in different ways, but which can be organized quite quickly and which can deliver the justice also, not in 10 years time, but during year or something similar to that. And I'm always repeating again a very popular saying by international lawyers, by those who represent justice systems, that justice delayed is justice denied. So that's again what we need to have in mind, and we need to have in mind that, for example, Nuremberg Tribunal started its activities in 1945 in October, and delivered its verdicts in 1946 in October. So I mean, it took several months to start tribunal after the Second World War, and it took 1 year to bring justice. So that is what is important, not only from a legal point of view, but also from political and geopolitical point of view. My question is, how do you see, and I think that, and you perhaps did a lot in order to convince EU Council to have this really very important conclusions. But now how we see next steps and what we can do, and what our network, what national parliaments can do, and how in general you see the whole this situation.
Yes, thank you. Well, Ukrainian friends have prepared also some options, statutes, but I think it is very important now indeed to move step by step. And the first step is that we need, of course, a minimal portion of countries supporting the idea and pressuring it to take place also as a universal approach of European Union. And if also third countries could occur, then better. And we do have also, I think, the Kosovo hybrid tribunal precedent which was based on European Union involvement as an organization involvement. And I think we need not I have also suggested other countries not to go to over detailed in the legalistic approach, which will give a way of these countries who are rather skeptical of the political determination to involve in that, to say, okay, we do not support any detail in that or logistical issue in that, and so therefore it is not, we remain hesitant. So I think it needs to be, in that case, should there be no loopholes in international accountability, and if the countries agree with that, and it is rather complicated to deny that. Secondly, the case is then truly, as you stated, ICC does not have competence over the basically launching the decision of aggression war, and so basically it then needs to be created a separate legal institution. However, it would be called as tribunal is usually in international texts used to the naming of that. And so what we now need is truly to get a certain point of gravity, to get several countries of supporters of that. And also, I think this tribunal concept is very important also to keep interlinked with the issue of reparations. Now, the frozen, hundreds of billions of resources are now frozen and money are frozen. And we need also, if we're speaking about legal accountability, is also about the reparations and the mechanism of use of this money for the compensation to victims and restoration of Ukraine. And so what I would call is indeed that we all maybe we will network would maybe make also a certain pledge to raise the issue in member state parliaments. And I think it's very important also to keep like-minded countries joined. Now there's a minimum consensus has been found, as I said, only deal with the tribunal, only with the crime of aggression, not any more issues.
Okay, Urmas, yeah, and that's that's what we are ready to do. At least in discussions what we have in our network and during our trips to the capitals, we see the need really of. And maybe we shall elaborate with, and it would be good to have your assistance. Of course, Ukrainians are doing a great job. We are in permanent cooperation with Anton Korinevich, special envoy on special tribunal. He was from our solo event with very clear messages. But it looks like that we need to have some kind of, written memo on answering all the questions. I mean, why this tribunal? Why not ICC? How it could be created and so on and so on. And that's what would be good for us, to have. And again, if your people would be able to join, in elaboration of some kind of this memo, it would be very good. I would ask also small additional question, because what we have heard in Paris, for example, somebody was saying, well, France is a little bit worried about creation of precedent, because also France, for example, is participating in some with their military forces trying to stabilize situation in different African countries and so on. And I understand that they are worried that this precedent, or creation of special tribunal can be used, against such country like France or United States or somebody else. What would be your answer?
Well, the tribunals have already been in the past. There is a vast set of tribunals and the tribunals are not universal ones, and they are separate ones only addressing this particular context and event to investigate. And if it would be the case of criticism that it creates international precedent, well, there are the last generation side is already full of these precedents. And I have seen also, I've spoken with bigger Western countries, representatives having such kind of hesitance. But I think the core, there are two excuses used. The first is you referred, the second could be that we should not harm ICC competence, which is not the case. It is additional to ICC competence, not replacing the ICC. But I think the core hesitance is that how we could return to the business with Putin when we have to find Nuremberg to Putin, and this is a problem. This is a delicate. Nobody dares to speak openly.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That's my point also. Very very similar to yours. That it would be good to have this tribunal in order for some, capitals not to dream anymore about coming back, to business as usual with Putin. Now, moving to, next item on EU, enlargement. You spoke about, our ideas to have something similar to Berlin process and so on. We are elaborating on that. Really, I see good, steps forward with political language, at least what we, were hearing recently from Ursula von der Leyen, in her speech to the European Parliament, even Joseph Borrell, who said that, unfortunately, Europe had no proper policy towards Russia and no policy towards Ukraine before the war, because Europe was too dependent on gas. And it looks like that on political level, high political level, really there is some kind of new positive development. But the issue on Ukrainian integration is also demands clear steps forward, which usually are done by European, what we can call bureaucracy and bureaucrats. And, we are worried that now in European bureaucratic approach, the beginning of negotiations, which is important process, next step, after Ukraine got candidate status, next step is to start negotiation. And now we hear from institutions, from bureaucrats, that in order to start negotiations, there is a need of special EU report, which according to council decision, when the candidate status was given, it was said that on Ukrainian, on Ukraine and Moldova, next report will be together with all other countries, in so-called traditional enlargement report, which will be ready only in October next year. So it means before that, no steps forward. And then 2024 is coming. 2024 is election year in Europe. And, I see that everything can be delayed and this momentum can be lost exactly in all those European bureaucratic procedures. My question is, do you see possibility that, for example, Foreign Affairs Council and also Swedish presidency would push for small amendment in the council decision, which is possible? That special report on Ukraine and Moldova, which would open the doors to begin negotiations, should be done somewhere early in spring, March or April, and so on, because that could be really a breakthrough in that in this issue of how to start negotiations. And I think that again we need to concentrate our efforts to push exactly something very concrete, not waiting till all the bureaucracy will start to move.
I think it is. I'm very positive of that proposal, and I fully share the concept that these tectonical times, the tectonical shifts taking place, we need to use in these harsh times also the momentum. If we fail to do a precedent now in the midst of this crisis, we will lose a momentum and we will be less capable to do it in a future. And in this context, I also would put to the point of gravity, particularly the Swedish presidency, and all this bureaucratic formal mechanism is in that context. Mechanisms could be used as an excuse not to do things, but I think there is always a moment in the appearance of political will to do in reality things, and to fall before just to 24. I think we were losing a time, and losing time is also crucial of the essence of quality of decisions. I'm pretty sure of the looking of the in ordinary peaceful times of the capability of European Union to find a consensus about in a real life enlargement. And I think also it's very important to take into consideration this what Ukrainian friends have appealed, that involvement to enlargement by slicing. And I think this free market opening as to give a clear vision on that matter is something which is added value. It brings also economic sustainability. And I think this gradual approach is very important.
Absolutely. No, that's our idea, which we were elaborating even before the war. And it's good that now the EU leadership started to move into that integration towards single market as first step. And we are planning our delegation visit of our network of United for Ukraine to Stockholm, exactly to speak about all those issues, how to overcome this bureaucratic obstacles inside of institutions and how to push for a single market, and we shall do it. I hope that it's the first half of December. Now, moving, our time is running, but one question on NATO membership. Are here discussions, formal or informal? I don't know. Maybe this is, I don't know if that's secret or not. But are here any discussions among foreign affairs ministers about exactly, Zelensky appeal to NATO for membership? And second point is, how do you see the arguments? One, in a positive way, arguments for what kind of arguments can be brought in order to support Ukrainian application. I have one argument which I'm trying to use, in addition to everything else, that they deserve that, that it was a big mistake in Bucharest, and that their capabilities, what they have shown, military capabilities, really are on such a level that NATO countries should come to train their soldiers, or they should ask, Ukrainian officers to go to other countries to train their soldiers. But in addition to that, I am always saying, look, this is a question also of future of Russia. And in a very simple way, I would say that I see that in Russia, there is a competition of two dreams. One is bad and wrong, negative, another can be positive. And negative dream is dream to reestablish empire. The positive one is to have a normal life in Russia, some kind of European type where Europe can help. But on this, on this negative dream, what Europe can do in order to assist Russians to abandon that dream? And I see just three things. One is really to support Ukraine to win the war against those in Russia who are still dreaming to restore empire. Second is tribunal. And the third one is really membership of Ukraine in NATO, which would send a clear signal to Russian society that forget about your dreams to restore empire. It's done. Ukraine is on our side. We made a political decision. So two simple questions. On first of all, are here any discussions among foreign affairs ministers of Europe, and second, what's about that?
Well, there have been rather silence in that context, to be honest. I think we made in the, it was, well, the President Zelensky statement was, I think, on Friday around noon on 13th of September. Then we Baltic ministers made a tweet on saying that, well, Ukraine belongs to NATO and so on. But it raised also questions amongst the other members. But my message is clear that if we will now be silent, the NATO countries will be silent and not give any, at least even a rhetorical step further from the